Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 7 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs explained to you in the easiest language possible. The topics are as follows. From your analysis section in the first topic, we will discuss the idea of universal healthcare for all in the backdrop of the recent reform which the government has brought in Ayushman Bharat scheme. Then the second topic will examine the causes behind the persisting income inequality between the steps and the steps which can be taken to tackle the same. Then from your simplified section, we'll be taking up 5 topics, try to simplify them for you and also provide value addition, keeping in mind the approaching prelims 2025 examination, so stay tuned. The government has expanded the scope of health care insurance which is provided under the flagship Ayushman Bharat scheme, aiming to achieve the health care for all. The idea which forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the theme of government policies and interventions. So with the large and diversified population which we have in our country, it actually acts as a persistent obstacle to achieve the idea of health equity, which is also actually very much visible from the notable differences which we see in the access to health and its outcome. On the basis of this argument, let's first try to understand what is the status of healthcare sector in our country. And for that purpose, what we are going to do is we are going to take the directives which were provided by the National Health Policy of 2017 and compare that with the recent data which has been provided to us by the National Family Health Survey 5 conducted between 2019 to 21. So basically the NHP 2017 directed the government to increase its expenditure up to 2.5% of GDP. At that time it used to be around 1.4%. If we refer to the budget 2024 which was launched by the government very recently, the expenditure on the health sector as a percentage of GDP stands at 2.1%, which is still lower than the policy's directive. Then when we look at the state, the policy's directive was that the state government's expenditure shall increase up to 8% of their state GDP. However, if you look at the accumulative expenditure by these state governments as a percentage of their GDP, it actually stands at 6.2% of the GDP only. Also, there are various major and large states which have large population. They are actually lagging on this behalf, such as for example, Punjab spends only 4.2%, Maharashtra spends only 4.6% and Karnataka spends only 4.9% of their GDP on the healthcare sector. Then what is the first point of access which you guys have to the public healthcare services when you guys are living in any particular area? That is the primary healthcare center. The NFHS 5 actually showcases us that this primary healthcare infrastructure in our country is in a very abysmal state. For example, the directive which was put to us by the National Health Policy 2017 was that there shall be in these primary healthcare infrastructure care centers, there shall be 2 beds per 1,000 people. However, there are only 0.6 beds as of 2023. Then it is stated that each primary healthcare center shall at least maintain 4 beds for the patients. Now, if you look at the state of Odisha, only 10% of these PHCs have these 4 beds and 41% of the PHCs in Bihar has these 4 beds. So obviously the issue or the fault lies with the policymaker. They set up such a staggering number of 4 beds in a primary healthcare center. How that will be possible, right? Then it also stated that 50% of the primary healthcare centers, they shall be open for at least 24 hours. However, if you look at the state of Himachal Pradesh, only 5% of the primary healthcare centers are open for 24 hours a day and 13% in the state of Maharashtra. Also, the primary healthcare centers at all levels are actually catering or covering more population than it was actually envisaged under the National Health Policy of 2017. Then in our country, this was the issue of the primary healthcare center. What about the doctors? So we have a critical shortage of these doctors to treat the patients actually, because we have only 0.8 doctors per 1,000 people. However, as per the World Health Organization, the recommended value is 1 doctor per 1,000 people. Now some of you will be like that, sir, we are very less far away from that. So you are just criticizing for the sake of criticism. Keep this in mind that 75% of these healthcare professionals actually resides in metropolitan cities. And these metropolitan cities, as per the Niti Aayog report, only caters 27% of our total population. That means we have 75% of the doctor treating 27% of the population. What about the remaining 73% of the population? Specifically the population which is living in the rural areas. Also, at one stage we are talking about that how we are going to become the third largest economy in the world, or how we are going to become a developed nation by 2047. But if we start comparing ourselves with the other developed and emerging economies, then the picture which it states to us is quite abysmal. For example, the doctor to patient ratio, right, as per the World Health Organization in our country is 7 per 10,000 population. Just look at the number of China, that is 25. Look at the number of USA, that is 36. Then if we talk about the bed to patient ratio, that the beds which we have for 10,000 people, that is a meager 16 in our country. That is around 50 in China and around 27 in USA. The out-of-pocket expenditure, which actually showcases that how the public healthcare is not able to meet the needs of these common people. The out-of-pocket expenditure in our country is around 47%. It is 34% in China, only 10% in USA. Then if we talk about the public health expenditure, as we discussed, it is 2.1%. That is also low when we talk about the other economies like USA, UK, Russia, China, Australia, etc. Then there exists some burgeoning issues which can actually act or acting as a dent to our demographic dividend, on the basis of which we are going to become a developed nation. The first is that if we look at the Public Health Foundation Survey Report of 2024, the non-communicable disease, the disease which are actually not propagated through the air medium, which are not actually that much contagious. So even if we are leaving out disease like, let's say for example, COVID-19, which actually caused a pandemic, these non-communicable disease are actually responsible for 60% of all fatalities. Also, the same reports suggest that by the year of 2030, the economic impact of such non-communicable disease will actually cost our economy around $6 trillion. So obviously that is going to be a huge load on the fiscal health of the government. Then there exists a poor status of health research in our country. So for that we are going to use the data provided to us by the WHO global estimate between 2010 to 2019. So it basically states that, let's say if we specifically talk about the cardiovascular disease. So the cardiovascular disease in our country constitutes to 16% of the total disease burden which we have. So obviously the significant portion of our research which we are conducting in the healthcare sector shall be directed to this. But this research on cardiovascular disease only forms 5% of the total research. Then yes, obviously there exist the disparities across the caste and gender. So again, the NFHS 5 data tells us that the SC and ST population, they have the highest share when it comes to the population with low immunization. They have the highest population when it comes to child mortality or maternal mortality. Also, if we talk about the women who form or fall in the 40% bottom quintile, when it comes to income, 59% of these women are actually suffering from anemia, which is basically the presence of low iron in your blood, which basically showcases the high amount of undernutrition which these women are facing. That is also visible from example the mortality rate of non-communicable disease. Just look at the staggering number India has. The maternal mortality ratio per 1 lakh live birth. So it has been stated here at 103, but currently it is around 97. But still that is quite high if we are comparing it with other economies. Just look at our infant mortality rate, which is basically between birth and 11 months, or our neonatal mortality rate, which is basically between 0 and 27 days. 18 children are dying, right, out of 1000 live births. Then the Niti Aayog report 2025 suggests that the slum population, which constitutes 25% of the metropolitan areas which we were discussing about, these are the areas where we can actually see the large amount of health disparity. The reason of these slums being having low kind of infrastructure, they are actually overcrowded. These people have very poor access to clean drinking water. Any contagious disease can just spread there and it can lead to large scale fatality. So these are also the issues which are prevailing. So what was the government response to it? That the government came up with a scheme called as Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana or Ayushman Bharat, which is basically currently the world's largest health insurance scheme, where the government provides 5 lakh rupees per family per year health insurance for what? For secondary and tertiary healthcare. So basically the government is saying that, let's say if you have to treat your cancer, or for example, let's say you are going through any kind of neurosurgery or cardiac care, all of that will be covered up to 5 lakh rupees, and that will be provided by the government, in which you can go and have your treatment in any public hospital or private hospital. And how the beneficiaries will be identified? They will be identified through the socio-economic caste census 2011, basically the people who fall below the poverty line, and thus the target is to cover the 40% bottom income quintile by the government. Remember that this scheme is basically a centrally sponsored scheme, in which means that the center share of this total 5 lakh rupees will be around 60% for the normal states, and for northeastern and Himalayan states it will go up to 90%. Also, there exists no restriction on family size and gender. There is also a family floater basis. So let's say if I am availing a treatment and that is coming to around 1 lakh, and there is my sister, she suffers from some such disease, right, and we both are poor, then what will happen? Then she can also avail from the remaining 4 lakh which it has, right? So one or more family members can avail at a very same time. There also exists a kind of a interstate operability, so it is very helpful for the migrant population. The nodal agency which implements this scheme is your National Health Authority, which is basically an autonomous body, and that has been created under the Registration of Societies Act 1860. And to prevent any kind of fraudulent activities, such as, for example, even though I do not fall in the poor bracket and I still make some documents to get this free healthcare access, then there exists a kind of a unit to tackle with that, and that is National Anti-Fraud Unit. What are the expenses which will be covered under this scheme? Keep these things in your mind from the prelims perspective as well. So the medical examination and consultation, the pre-hospitalization up to 3 days, post-hospitalization up to 15 days. Even if I am going to be admitted in intensive care unit or ICU or any medical implantation, all of that will be covered under the provisions of the scheme. But such noble scheme also faces a lot of persisting issues. The first is obviously the frauds and abuse, which were also covered in one of the previous section of your analyst, where we discuss about these issues. The first was obviously the treatment of the dead patients. Sounds a bit amusing. Let's try to analyze this. So let's say what happens that I go to avail treatment in one of the hospitals. However, I have some incurable disease like love. What will happen? Let's say I died within 3 days. But this hospital will consider to be keep on treating me for the next 7 days, so that it can actually claim higher amount of health insurance for the treatment cost, the treatment which did not occur itself. Correct? Second is, just look at this CAG's performance audit report, which was actually tabled in the Lok Sabha in 2023, which talked about the multiple cases of frauds which were happening in Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So what will start happening, that there are various people who are registering themselves with various kind of fake Aadhaar cards, fake mobile numbers, right? And they are trying to avail these kind of health insurances. So there are various chains of private and public hospitals which are also involved in this. They are sending a list to the government. They are saying that these 100 people got treatment. Such 7.5 lakh people who were considered to be availing the treatment under the Ayushman Bharat, they were registered on the one single number. Also, the household size which are being showcased to availing the treatment, that also seems quite unrealistic. And in various cases, these private hospitals are actually breaching the norms and trying to take over the functions which has been assigned to the public hospitals under the provisions of the scheme. So these are the frauds and abuse which are taking place. But at the same time, there are also certain systematic failures which has occurred. So for example, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare says that it has no single database for the private hospital. Let's imagine that I'm a poor person. You don't have to imagine, I am poor. What happens? I go to the government hospital first and I need some kind of a special surgery. Two things can happen. First, either they don't have enough devices for that, or they don't have trained doctor for that. So because of this lack of infrastructure and the absence of doctor, let's say in the rural area, what I will end up doing, I will go to the private hospital. But now there is no such registry or something where I can actually go and see whether this private hospital is impaneled under Ayushman Bharat or not. What if after the treatment they say that no, there was a prank, look, there is a camera and now you will have to pay the amount. That will actually lead to high amount of indebtedness, add up to the rural indebtedness which exists, correct? Second is what is happening that let's say these private hospitals, they are actually charging high amount of hospital cost as well as the various kind of treatment cost, which is actually coming almost 7 times more than what it will cost in a government hospital as per a Hindu report. Then obviously we have seen the infrastructure which we have for the primary healthcare. So obviously the disease will over a period of time accumulate and lead to high amount of secondary and tertiary diseases, and thus it will further burden the secondary and tertiary infrastructure. Then what is happening that because of these fraudulent issues, obviously the government is taking a lot of steps to actually clear the claims of the private hospitals. So various private hospitals, because there exists a delay in the claim settlements and many of the time rejections, they are denying such Ayushman Bharat patients, as you guys can see here. The next question which arises is that this whole scheme covers the expenses up to 5 lakh rupees. But what will happen after that, right? So let's say for example, I go to any particular hospital and the initial cost which was told to me was within 5 lakh rupees. So I kind of enrolled there under Ayushman Bharat. Now after the treatment they are telling me that because of certain, let's say, expediencies, the cost has been increased to 7 lakh rupees. Now I am coming from a rural area. As I have told you, I am a poor person. I do not have this much of a money. What I will do now? This is actually a major issue because of which the various state governments like Delhi government is actually stating that we are not going to enroll under the Ayushman Bharat, the kind of the idea which the government had. The reason being that because of the kind of schemes, health insurance schemes we have, that is universal. So there is no financial cap on that, right? So currently there exist along with this Ayushman Bharat 17 health insurance schemes as well, and that is causing a kind of a tussle, the issue of federalism. Thus, what was the government response to all these issues which was taking place? The government, following the idea of achieving universal health coverage by 2030 under the goal of SDG 3.8, it stated that from now onwards, all senior citizens who are aged above 70 years and above, doesn't matter you fall in the poor income bracket or the higher income bracket, so there is no income bar, you can avail the treatment under the Ayushman Bharat and you will be provided 5 lakh rupees per family per year. Now the government is going to actually identify these Ayushman beneficiaries and going to issue a card for you. So now you guys can just go to any particular hospital with that card and can avail that services, that is via Vandana card. Also, the government has responded to the criticism by the state government. It has said that the opposition states are actually the top beneficiaries under the Ayushman Bharat. Just look at these kind of opposition ruled states and the kind of the expenses which the government is providing to them. Also, the government has taken various other steps to actually enhance the public healthcare sector in our country, such as, for example, it has launched the phase 2 of All India Institute of Ayurveda, launching Panchkarm festivals. Then it has created a kind of a Ayurvedic pharmacy for the drug manufacturing, and it is trying to promote IT and startup sector, particularly in this healthcare sector, by creating various incubation center. To further increase the healthcare access, the government has launched drone services at 11 tertiary healthcare center. Then the government is creating a UWIN portal to provide fully digitalized vaccination process for the pregnant mothers, for the infant child and the child up to from 0 to 16 years. Then the government is also taking up this healthcare sector under the Make in India initiative, and the government is saying that the production linked incentive scheme will be extended to medical devices and bulk drug parks. So on the basis of this discussion which we have had, just try to attempt this particular question and we move forward to the next news, where we are actually going to discuss a very interesting editorial which appeared today in the Hindu, and it talks about the relative income economic performance of the states from the year of 1960 to 24, highlighting the increasing income inequality among these states. An issue which forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the idea of inclusive growth and GS2 paper under the idea of issues related to federalism. Here specifically we are talking about the issue of fiscal federalism. So let's first try to understand what does this article suggest. The article suggests that there was a report called as Relative Economic Performance of Indian States from 1960 to 2024, which was actually released by the Economic Advisory Council of the Prime Minister, where it basically analyzed the share of each state in country's income and the per capita income and compare it with the all India average. The idea was to actually reflect at the average welfare of the citizen of each state relative to the all India level. But the editorial today suggests that this report actually hides the inequality. For instance, for example, it suggests that the Maharashtra, which is the highest contributor to the nation's economy, it has a per capita income which is actually 150% of the national average. But the editorial suggests that if we compare the same Maharashtra, is it prosperous across the line? The answer is no. Because in the very same state, you guys will find Mumbai, which is very rich, and the Vidarbha region, which is actually known for the farmer suicides due to poverty and the drought which takes place there. For example, just look at the staggering number of the farmer suicide which is taking place in our country and look at the Maharashtra share there. The same state which is the highest contributor to the nation's economy, right? So there is a kind of an income inequality which exists within the richest state, and thus this idea of showcasing that this particular state is faring this much in the income does not reflect at the grassroots picture. Then the article suggests that there is also emerging certain regional differentials. For example, the southern regions, they are showing consistently better performance. And the northern states have actually done poorly with the exceptions of Haryana and Delhi. And the article suggests that there is a growing income divide in the country, which is obviously not good for a federal and diverse nation such as India. So for example, let's look at the state's GDP per capita in US dollar as per 2024. Just look at the staggering numbers which these southern states has and the coastal states, right? For example, the Maharashtra's income is $3,926 per capita. For Karnataka, it is $4,637. Look at the number of Uttar Pradesh here. It is like Maharashtra or Karnataka's income is almost 3 to 4 times than that of UP. Maybe this is also one of the reasons why, because of the northern belt is migrating so much towards the south, because there are so many job opportunities there, because of which there is a issue of son of soil doctrine, the kind of issue of regionalism. So obviously that can convert into a federal issue. Then these states has also, for example, the representative of richer states recently held a conclave in Kerala and argued that they are not receiving their fair share of resources from the center, which is also a major issue. Now, let's first try to analyze that what are the causes of this economic divide which persists between the richer southern states and the poorer northern states. So the first argument which has been given by the editorial today is that the private investment actually goes to these developed area where the large market actually ensures them a lot of profit. So obviously, let's say if I am as a company, I want to invest, I want to do the foreign direct investment in some regions of the states in the India, obviously I will be looking up at those states which can actually provide me higher dividend for the investment which I have done. So obviously the states which are more industrialized, which have access to the coastal area, where the trade activity is much more, where the manufacturing is a lot, obviously I am going to invest in those regions, not the consuming states of the north, correct? Second is, because of these coastal regions, these states have cheap access to the external markets, and they also enable cheaper access to the external market through the exports as well as cheap imported inputs as well. Then there exists a kind of a infrastructure availability and good quality of governance in this region, as well as the better quality of education and health. So obviously that will lead to what? A more productive labor force. So obviously, let's say if Tesla is coming tomorrow and it wants to create a company at any particular place, it will be looking at the factors of production. One of the important factor is labor. So where there is actually huge availability of skilled labor, it is much easier for me to actually enroll these people. So here the investment will be much more. For example, just look at the foreign direct investment numbers for the states of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and then just look at the numbers which Rajasthan, West Bengal and Jharkhand have, and also notice the complete absence of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Look at the literacy rate for that example. Look at the number of Kerala. Look at the number of Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Gujarat. Compare that with Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand region, or for example Odisha and Chhattisgarh. So obviously if the people here are more literate in this particular belt, obviously they are going to achieve much higher level of education and much higher level of skill, which is actually much more accustomable to the need of Industry 4.0. Then they just obviously that will translate to the high amount of unemployment rate, that is 37% in Haryana, or it is around 8% in Delhi, 13% almost in Bihar. Look at the number of northeastern states, or for example West Bengal and Jharkhand. Then just come towards south. Look at the number at Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Telangana, Maharashtra or Gujarat for as example. So obviously there is high amount of unemployment which is persisting in the region of north. Obviously that will act as one of the major push factor for the migration, correct? Then there another issues which exist is the role of new economic policy of 1991, which actually created kind of more impetus on the private investment, which is actually formed the 75% of the total investment. So thus, because there came a much more impetus on the private sector, moving away from the public sector, it made more investment going to the richer states where profits were higher. Because if we would have been following the socialist policy, obviously we'll be looking to do the investments much more in the underdeveloped regions of UP and Bihar. But now if there is a capital economy, obviously the people are investing where they are finding it much more profitable. Then the considerable household savings has increasingly got diverted as well from the poorer state to these richer ones. Obviously you can see the kind of urban agglomeration which is taking place in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Chennai, in Delhi. So people are buying properties here. They are shifting their families to here because of the good access to infrastructure. So there is a diversion of household savings to these richer states as well. And that is actually reflected in the low credit to deposit ratio of the poorer state when it is compared to the richer state. Then these poorer states have a large share of unorganized sector, so which obviously comprises 90% of our economy, and that is major bulk of this actually resides in the poorer states, correct? But if we look at the new economic policy after 1991, it was actually giving much more impetus to not these micro level industries or unorganized sector, rather these large scale MNCs and companies, and thus much more impetus on the organized sector. Also, these poorer states, they were earlier benefiting from the kind of monopoly which they had on the natural reserves or natural resources, but now the government has created various kind of dedicated freight corridors, so the logistic has improved as well, and that has further contributed to the richer states becoming much more richer. But these states are actually raising a kind of an issue, and that is that they are not receiving fair share of resources from the center. So what used to happen till the 14th Finance Commission when it comes to the devolution of taxes between the center and the state, it used to follow a method. It used to be like that, okay, from population of 2011, so on the basis of that, like how much population do you have, how much work you have done in the demographic performance and all of that, so that was given to 10%. The area of the state was considered for 15%, forest and ecology 7.5%, and the income distance used to be 50%. Even right now, this income distance actually exists at 45%. Two new criteria were introduced in 15th Finance Commission, also appeared in your prelims examination. That was tax and fiscal efforts as well as demographic performance. Now try to understand this idea of income distance. So let's say, first of all, how we will kind of compute the income of a particular state through its gross state domestic product per capita for the last 3 years. On the basis of this, currently the state with the highest per capita income, that is Telangana, followed by Haryana. I'm talking about the very recent numbers. So now, let's say there is a state that is UP. So the difference which they have in their income per capita, that will be calculated, and on the basis of that, a ranking will be devised. So let's say the Telangana will come at the lowest, and the state which is at the top, that has the highest income distance from Telangana. So who will get the most tax devolution? This will be this state, right? So obviously, let's say I have done good work and I have become richer, but when it is come to government rewarding me, it is actually giving much more taxes to the poorer person. It's just like a richer son in the house whose income is being diverted to his poorer brother, and he's saying, why I'm paying at the cost of his. So this income distance is one of the major issue as well. Then just look at the share of overall tax devolution. If we talk about the increase in the percentage share, just look at the states whose percentage has actually declined. For example, Telangana, Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, all of the states which has actually been doing good. So what does the article or editorial actually suggest for? What are the steps which we can take to actually decline this increasing income inequality and solve this federal issue? The first is that there shall be reversal of trend of the private investment and the weak governance and poor infrastructure. What the government has done for that? It has launched Make in India and Production Linked Incentive Scheme, and it is providing under that various incentives to create manufacturing in this underdeveloped state, to promote industries there, promote startups. Then all the states shall actually have a kind of a collusion to work for collaborative development. For that purpose, the Niti Aayog's Team India has been created. So all the states are kept on one table. So there can be a uniform approach to the development. Then to create a uniform infrastructure, sound infrastructure across the country, there is a kind of a collusion of PM Gati Shakti scheme which has been launched. So under that, the various kind of scheme which we have for infrastructure, they are being monitored at one place, such as for example, Sagarmala, Bharatmala, Udan, etc. Then the editorial suggests that we should raise the public expenditure on social sector, for which the government has brought the National Education Policy 2020, the Ayushman Bharat which we discussed, skilling the people under the Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0, providing or giving jobs to the people, unemployed youth under PM internship scheme. Also, we need to focus upon the unorganized sector, and for that the government is actually registering these unorganized sector workers on eShram portal, providing them social security covers under the Social Security Code of 2020, as well as providing them various incentives under the PM Shram Yogi Mandhan as well. So keep these suggestions in your mind, keep this argument very close to you for the issue of fiscal federalism, and try to attempt this particular question. We move forward to the next news, where we are going to talk about a new civil registration portal which has been launched by the Ministry of Home Affairs. First, let's try to understand that what is this civil registration system. It is basically India's uniform centralized portal for continuous and universal recording of vital events. What are the vital events? Vital events like the birth, the death, the stillbirth, or for example, the infant mortality, for which the data we were just discussing about. The idea is that all of these vital data are actually created and stored through a centralized portal, which basically forms your civil registration system, the data which is actually an essential component of your socio-economic planning. Keep this in mind that the creation and management of this uniform portal actually lies with the state government, and this CRS is actually monitored by the Registrar General of India. The Registrar General of India, which is basically an attached office under the Ministry of Home Affairs, created in the year of 1961. So what does this civil registration system actually does? The idea is that the registration of birth and death is considered as the right of every individual. Thus, the Registration of Birth and Death Act of 1969 actually makes it compulsory for various stakeholders to compulsorily register these birth and death which are taking place. Which are these stakeholders which can actually go and report, such as for example, the head of the household, the medical or the health attendant, or for example, the keeper or the owner of that place, or let's say for example, that particular hospital. Is there any timeline which has been provided under which you guys should compulsorily report such birth, death, infant mortality which is taking place? Yes, absolutely. Such compulsory reports shall be filled or submitted within the 21 days to whom? To the Registrar General of Birth and Death in that particular region. Let's say if you are in a rebellion mode, you say that I will not do it within 21 days. Then what will happen? So if you are going to report after 21 days but within 30 days, you need to pay a penalty. If you are going to report after 30 days, but then within 1 year, you need to have a written permission of the Registrar General of Birth and Death of that particular region. Or if you are reporting after 1 year, then you need a written permission or the order of the magistrate of the first class. Here, keep one thing very importantly in your mind, that is that there exists no provision to register the death of an Indian citizen which has occurred outside the country. Now let's look at some data that how these states are actually faring when it comes to this prescribed time limit of 21 days. Just look at the less number of states which we have, which actually reported within the 50 days time period, and look at the states which we have which have reported more than 3 months later the birth and death which occurred in their particular area. Also, coming to what are the kind of the data which is being provided to us by this civil registration system. So just look at the sex ratio data which has been provided to us. Also look at the staggering number of the states with less than 950 sex ratio, meaning that 950 girls for 1000 boys. Just look at that particular state, right? So I think a lot of people are going to remain unmarried in the future for sure. Coming to, there exist various kind of issues with this civil registration system. First is obviously the loopholes which you guys might have identified when we're discussing about the provisions of it within the act itself. What does the act states? The act states that the birth and death or any such vital event can be reported even after 1 year of its occurrence, correct? So obviously what will happen? The people will start colluding with the local authority, with the district magistrate, the magistrate of first class, and they will register actually the events such as, for example, birth much later. Why? Because it can actually provide them the age if they are preparing for various kind of, let's say, government services. Obviously, such authority which has been given or has been vested in a single authority of magistrate, that can lead to creeping corruption where they actually collude with the defaulters for the exchange of a meager amount of money. Also, there exists a lot of mismatch of data when it comes to this civil registration system and the international organizations. You guys can actually recall the furor which was caused back in 2020 when the World Health Organization said that India is actually misreporting the COVID death which is occurring there through its civil registration system. Also, there can be various kind of under coverage because of the systematic constraints which used to exist earlier. For example, during the COVID time, how I am supposed to actually come out during that lockdown and go to the nearest registration of birth and death office. So to tackle with one of these challenges, what the government did, it brought the Registration of Birth Death Amendment Act of 2023, where it said that now the registration is possible through the portal of crsorg.government.in, which is also now the government has launched a mobile application to actually integrate the technology with the governance. So you guys can actually quote this example as a digital governance as well. Now the registration of birth, death will become more seamless and hassle-free. It will allow the citizens to register at any time from any place, even in their state's official language. Also, as per this amendment, all reported birth and death in the country occurring from the October 1, 2023 can be digitally registered through this particular portal. Then the digital birth certificate will be a single document now to prove the date of birth for various services, such as, for example, if you want admission to any education institution, if you want your government job or marriage registration. Also, it will help to update the National Population Register or NPR, the data for which was first collected in 2010 and then updated in 2015. Through door-to-door enumeration, it already includes information about 119 crore residents. And NPR, remember, is the first step for the creation of National Register of Citizens as per the Citizenship Act. Now let's try to understand what is NPR. NPR is basically a register of the usual residents of the country, not citizens. Keep this in mind. So why NPR is required? To actually create an identity database that who all are living in our country, to prepare a credible register for every family and individual, to strengthen the security and improve the targeting beneficiaries for various schemes, also to eliminate the kind of duplication in voter list or, for example, in the Aadhaar list from which these kind of fraudulent activities were taking place in Ayushman Bharat scheme. Now, who all can get enrolled here? all those people who has resided for the past 6 months or more in the local area, or a person who intends to reside for the next 6 months. And how this NPR is actually different from NRC? Because it is a database of people living in India. However, the NRC is a database of Indian citizen, and that basically demands the proof of citizenship from the respondent. Here for NPR, you don't need to provide any document. So keep all of these important terms and facts which we have learned in your mind, and we move forward to the next news, where we are actually going to learn about a very interesting statutory body which we have, and that is the Delimitation Commission, and what does this exercise actually entails about. So what is happening, that the center has indicated that the much delayed census would now start as early as the next year, and it has to be completed by 2026. The idea is that if you are going to complete the census, then the government can actually appoint a delimitation commission, and then when the next election is going to take place by 2029, the election will actually take place on the basis of the newly delimited constituencies. And the implementation of the reservation for women in elected bodies, that is also going to be a major issue. So first, let's try to understand what does this delimitation actually exist for. Delimitation is the process of fixing or redrawing the boundaries of the territorial constituencies. Why? So that the population of all constituencies which are going to vote, they remain equal throughout the states and UTs. Do we have any constitutional provision which actually states the same? Yes, absolutely. For Lok Sabha, we have the Article 80, and for legislative assemblies, we have Article 170, which actually directs the parliament to readjust the allocation of seats in Lok Sabha and legislative assembly after every census. Similarly, there exists Article 330 and 332, which kind of allows the parliament to refix the seat for SCs and STs in Lok Sabha and Legislative Assembly. Now, there is going to be a delimitation commission who is going to be appointed to carry out this exercise. What is this? So it is basically a body which is created under the Act, and it acts as a high-powered committee. It is appointed by the president, and it is composed of, remember, retired or a working Supreme Court judge, the election commissioner and the concerned state election commissioners. The order of this delimitation commission acts as a force of law, and it cannot be questioned before any court. Remember this in mind. Now, though the decadal census has been conducted 7 times since independence from 1951 to 2011, in 2021 it was actually kind of delayed because of the COVID which took place, the delimitation exercise has been carried out only 4 times through the Act, that is Act of 1952, 53, 73 and 2002. On the basis of this very simple discussion which we just had, just try to solve these 2 particular questions and please comment down your answers. One of the prelims 2024 and one of your prelims 2012. Now, the last delimitation, however, only readjusted the boundaries of the constituencies based on the population. And it did not lead to increase in the number of seats, which have remained constant since the year of 1976. This was because the constitution was amended in 1976 and 2001 to actually readjust the allocation of seats till the finding of the first census which will take place after 2001, and that was further extended to 2026 respectively. Currently, the number of Lok Sabha seats which we have, that is what, 543, and if we kind of accumulate all the state legislative assembly seats, that exists for 4,120. Now, these numbers were decided on the basis of what? On the basis of 1971 census, keep this in your mind, for Lok Sabha, and 2001 census for the state constituencies. When the country population at that time in 1971 was 54 crore around, and when it was decided for state legislative assembly in 2001, what was our population? Around 102 crore. Now we are almost reaching 130, more than that. The 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, brought by the Indira Gandhi government, it actually amended the Article 170 and froze the delimitation exercise until the result of the first census after 2000. In 2001, it was further extended for 25 years, and now the delimitation will happen only after the result of first census after 2026 are published. But the article highlights that there are certain issues which still prevails. First is, the question is that the raise on whether the 2021 census, which is taken in 2025 and published in 2026, can it become a basis for the readjustment which has been mandated under Article 82? The provision will have to be amended to facilitate the delimitation before the next Lok Sabha election. Apart from this, there are various other amendments which are required, such as, for example, composition of Lok Sabha Article 81, composition of state assemblies Article 170, and the president election under Article 55, that will have to be altered as well. Also, the Delimitation Act passed by the Parliament have said that readjustment is done on the basis of census, physical features, existing boundaries or administrative units, facilities of communication and public convenience. The same challenges which actually led to readjustment being postponed in 1976 and 2001 even remain today. Because what will happen that there are certain states which has actually done very good in their demographic performance. Basically, they have curbed down their total fertility rate and they have maintained a sustainable population. But when this readjustment will take place, as we are going to give the states their share in legislative assembly or Lok Sabha, obviously the states with larger population will get more seats. So obviously that means that basically there were certain states which were actually taking steps to maintain a healthy population under the directives of the government, and those states are going to have lesser representation in the Lok Sabha, right? So that is a major issue. The another major issue is about the women reservation. So for example, the government has introduced 33% reservation of the seats in the Lok Sabha for the women through your 128th Amendment Act, providing 33% reservation in Lok Sabha as well as the State Legislative Assembly. Now the idea is that the reason women's reservation did not become a reality in the last 35 years was obviously the kind of patriarchal mindset which still exists among the male politicians, that they will have to let 33% of their seats go, right? So the 33% reservation, if we apply currently in today's time in 545 member of Lok Sabha, 182 seats will be reserved for women. So the male members will only get 363. Currently they have 467 seats. So now what they are going to do, they are going to increase the seats in the Lok Sabha. The strength of Lok Sabha can increase up to 770 as per the current population which we have. So now there will be 257 seats for women, but still the men will have 530. That is much more than what they have now, right? So these are the kind of the arguments which has been raised in the today's explained section. Keep all of this in your mind and we move forward to the next news, where we are going to talk about a very interesting concept which has been highlighted by the Reserve Bank of India, and that is about the use of artificial intelligence in your banking sector. So the article basically suggests that the artificial intelligence and the machine learning tools, they are progressively into the core operation in the India's banking sectors, and the players like various banks are actually leveraging this artificial intelligence to improve the customer experiences, to actually cut down the cost and manage various kind of risk. Let's see an example of that. So there is IPAL, which is basically an omni-channel bot which has been created by ICICI Bank, which is the country's second largest private bank by assets. Can any one of you tell me in the comment section which is the largest private bank when it comes to the assets in our country? So what does this IPL actually does? It tackles the general banking queries from the customer. It includes transactions, as for example bill payments. It funds the transfers and also help the users to navigate within the bank's app or website, extending personalized product offers. So there are various kind of analytical use of artificial intelligence which is being done by these banks, such as for example customer facing bots are there who are providing general banking queries. They are solving all of that. There are also several bots which has been created which are actually pre-approving the loans. For example, they are checking the customers' data and all through SMS, email, providing them instant loans, sanctioned through internet, mobile banking without the need of documentation itself, or you don't need to visit the branch now. Also, they are conducting various kind of eligibility tests. So your data is being scrutinized so that you can be like qualified for these kind of loans or not. The pre-approved offers are then sent through the internet banking. Then there is your early warning system. So they also act as a kind of an indicator for the stress in the standard accounts. They are identified early and the alerts are set to the operating staff. So the early identification helps the bank to actually take some corrective measures. You can use all of this when you guys are writing about the uses of artificial intelligence, specifically in the banking sector. And that is why if you look at the AI word count for the public and private banks, just look at how staggering pace it has increased, almost tripling down in the last 6 to 7 years. But the governor of RBI has actually highlighted that there exist several kind of risks. First is obviously the screening of such potential customers, and their data can lead to the breaching of your right to privacy, guaranteed as a integral part of your fundamental right of Article 21, your right to dignified life, as held in case Puttaswamy case by the Supreme Court. Then there are certain concentration risks, because this service provision of artificial intelligence to these banks are being dominated by the small number of technology providers. So obviously that can lead to oligopoly or monopoly in this particular section. Then completely relying on such artificial intelligence also makes the system much more prone to the cyber attacks, leading to the various kind of disruptions in banking sector. And if that takes place, just imagine the amount of investments or the kind of savings which we have in the banks. Let's say in the matter of a second, because of a cyber attack or some Trojanware, all of that vanishes. The kind of cascading effect it will have across the financial sector, that is a major challenge. Then there is a kind of an opacity which exists with this artificial intelligence system. So it is very difficult to audit or interpret algorithm. That makes it, very potentially leading to unpredictable consequences in the market. Then, to regulate this artificial intelligence, the government has taken several steps. First is your global partnership on artificial intelligence. So under this, there was a kind of a summit which was conducted. 29 parties were there, nations were there who are the part of this GPI. They launched a kind of a New Delhi Declaration 2023 to provide a uniform regulation as well as create standard to regulate the artificial intelligence, including in the banking sector. Then there is a government national program on artificial intelligence to create home drone driven devices to actually provide the regulation of the data of the users to protect their data. Third is obviously all of this is being done under the Data Protection Act of 2023 as well. Then the Niti Aayog has actually launched the principles of responsible AI for the banking sector, and the RBI has taken several steps as well. It has directed the banks actually to align the development of artificial intelligence and its uses with the sustainable development goals. Then it is actually providing a strict regulation through the regulatory supervision role under the RBI Act of 1934, where RBI is considered as a bank of bank. Then it has also launched for the awareness of the citizen, the awareness of the customer, the Digital Saksharta Abhiyan. So remember all of these steps when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence in banking sector, and we move forward to the next news, where we are basically going to talk about a tiger reserve which actually appeared today, and that is the Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. First of all, let's have some basic information about the tiger or the Panthera tigris. The Panthera tigris, which is actually has been registered as endangered in the IUCN list. In the Appendix 1 of the CITES list, which basically means that any kind of trade in this tiger is actually regulated at a very strict level among the international bodies, and in the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 2023. The major reason was the staggering decline in the number of tiger population in our country, and that is why, to protect them and conserve them, the Project Tiger was launched in the year of 1973. Keep this in mind that with the efforts which we have taken, currently as per the tiger census of 2023, India currently has the largest population of tiger in the world. So there are basically 13 tiger range countries, India being one of them, and we currently have the largest tiger population of 3,682. To preserve these tigers, we have 55 tiger reserves in our country. All the tiger reserves which exist in your Madhya Pradesh region, I have highlighted them for you. We are discussing this one currently, that is Bandhavgarh. There are several states and UTs which does not have tiger reserves, that has been highlighted as well, right? First of them, obviously you guys can see here, the Corbett Tiger Reserve. Then there are very famous ones such as, for example, the Nagarjuna Sagar Sri Salem, which also appeared in the prelims question. Why? Because it is the largest tiger reserve in the country. Then there exists a Orang Tiger Reserve here in Assam, which you guys can see on the map. This is also famous because it has the smallest tiger reserve in the country. When we are saying this tiger reserve, we basically mean the core area, right? Not also including the buffer area. Then, which state has the highest population as per the tiger census? That is also Madhya Pradesh, where the Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve is located, followed closely by Karnataka, Uttarakhand and Maharashtra. When we talk about the reserves, the Jim Corbett Tiger Reserve here has the largest population of tiger reserves. The Bandipur is the second, which is in Karnataka. The Nagarhole, which is also in Karnataka, is third, and the Bandhavgarh is basically has the fourth largest tiger population. So remember all of these facts. If possible, you guys can also note down these tiger reserves on your map. And we talk specifically now about the Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. The tiger reserves has been repeatedly in the news, this time because of the death of elephants, earlier because of the death of the tigers which has taken place because of the various reasons, such as for example electrocution, infighting, disease, the kind of poisoning, road accidents, etc. Now remember that it is one of the 7 tiger reserves in Madhya Pradesh, and as per the legend, it was basically there is a Bandhavgarh fort. The legend says that the Lord Ram actually gave this fort to Lakshman. So from there the area derived its name, that is the fort which was given, that is Garh, to the brother, that is Bandhav. So Bandhavgarh. And this Bandhavgarh Forest Reserve actually lies between Vindhya and Satpura range. It has a vegetation of tropical moist deciduous forest as well as sal and grassland. Remember that beside tiger there are various kind of endangered species which are found here, such as for example leopard, bear, spotted deer, chausingha as well as chinkara. And then there are certain terms which can given to you and ask what does this stand for, such as for example Saj, Tendu, Arjun and Palas. They are basically the kind of deciduous floral species which are found in the region of Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. So keep all of this factual information in your mind and we move forward to the last news of the day, where we are going to talk about that how the government is actually trying to promote Ayurveda in the veterinary section, which forms an important component of your livestock sector as well. So what is the news? The news is that the various kind of disease which actually impacts the livestock sector, such as for example the foot and mouth disease or the lumpy skin disease. So to tackle all of these, there are various kind of antibiotics which are given to them by the farmers. However, these antibiotics have kind of very deteriorating impact on the human as well as other flora and fauna health. For example, there is tetracycline antibiotic which actually lowers down the carbon sequestration, so that actually kind of negatively impacts the environment. Then there is a cattle drug called as diclofenac, which is actually hugely responsible for the declining vulture population which has become critically endangered. So the government is suggesting that we should actually discard these antibiotics and we should actually use Ayurvedic drugs, specifically under the provisions of National Animal Disease Control Program with the approach that is One Health approach. So remember these two important antibiotics. Remember how the government is trying to actually, increase the use of Ayurvedic. For what government has done, the government has come up with standard veterinary treatment guidelines released recently by the Union Ministry of Animal Husbandry, aiming to reduce and regulate the use of antibiotics. The SVTG will also provide for the use of Ayurvedic drug in the treatment, and it is the first time that the center has come up with a standard set of treatment for almost all disease of animal and birds. So keep these important facts in your mind, and with this we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. Also, before we leave, a very happy Diwali to all of the students from the team of Vajiram and Ravi. Celebrate the festival just how you guys are going to light the firecrackers. Also make sure that you bring the light in your life as well. Your role as a future bureaucrat is very important because the policies which you guys are going to implement and make in the future will end up lighting a lot of lives. So make sure that you guys have the fun for the 2 days, 3 days, but please come back to your preparation with same vigor, with same courage and with same excitement. On this note, we will have a goodbye. All the best for your preparation and thank you.